well. And with your permission, we will start our first session for the day. As I said in the beginning, and as I said yesterday during the Troika meeting, and I would like to extend my thanks for the constructive way, the impeccable way in which the Troika has conducted the meeting yesterday. The first session, let me be very proud in saying, is about the achievements of the presidency, of the Romanian presidency. This is a session that we have all been looking for, and we were very optimistic about it when we were preparing the mandate and when we were actually conducting the mandate of the presidency. And I'm very happy that among our speakers, our keynote speakers today, is also the Prime Minister of Romania, Mrs. Viorica Dăncilă. And I would like to give her the floor to address the 61st plenary meeting of Cosac. Thank you very much, Madam Prime Minister.
Stimați invitați,
distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to be present here today at this very important event that was organized in the parliamentary dimension of the Romanian presidency of the European Council. Your invitation is an honor for me, and I would like to thank the Romanian Parliament for its major involvement in carrying out the activities of the Romanian presidency. For the Romanian government and for me personally as a Prime Minister, holding the presidency is, after the moment of Romania's accession 12 years ago, a confirmation of our commitment to the European project. We have committed very responsibly this mandate, and we got very involved so that by the end of our mandate we can show results that citizens can understand clearly. We have managed to solve important files and to advance negotiations on many topics that were pending in the past years and that can be translated into major changes for the better in the lives of the European citizens. We have invested a lot of energy in order to have positive results, particularly at this moment when the Parliament was re-elected, in order to advance negotiations to reach consensus on the future MFF and in order to adequately manage Brexit, irrespective of its results. From the very beginning of its mandate, the Romanian presidency has managed over 1,750 meetings, out of which over 60 were at the ministerial level, be it formal or informal. Our efforts have led to finalization of the negotiations in a large number of files, and I'm talking here about files about combating disinformation and fake news and increased access to information for the citizens. We also have files that target a better data protection, an enhancement of the security of identity cards, and at the same time a more efficient exchange of views and information and a better protection of external borders as a measure against combating terrorism. At the same time, we have managed files that deal with the correct information of consumers regarding the quality of food and also punishments for those who violate rules, or files that talk about work-life balance and about ensuring gender equality and equal opportunity for all. We have managed to achieve consensus of all member states on complex files that were pending for the past few years, such as the one about ensuring energetic security for the European Union. At the same time, under our mandate, we have, in the past 2 months, adopted 56 Council conclusions regarding foreign relations of the European Union, combating terrorism, climate change, education, regional strategies, or industrial policy. At the same time, we have organized events that highlighted the increased attention that we paid to the European values that join us. As an example, I would like to mention here combating anti-Semitism, xenophobia, racism, hate speech, as well as combating fake news. These were priority themes for our presidency, and they highlight the special attention that Romania pays to the real challenges in European societies. We want these themes to be continued by the incoming presidencies as well. Through our general approach and through the results that we have obtained on each and every file we managed, we have reiterated the fact that the Romanian society is deeply committed to European values. But what is the most important thing, through our actions, we advanced the European agenda through a unitary approach, an inclusive and cohesive approach. We have managed to bring the European Union closer to its citizens, and we have done this through a strong cooperation with the European Parliament and with the European Commission. Let me assure you once again that, benefiting from the experience of this mandate, Romania will continue to act to fulfill the objective of a more consolidated European Union, for enhancing European policies, and for promoting the importance of solidarity and unity within the European Union. Thank you very much for your attention.
Vă mulțumesc și eu foarte mult, doamnă.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And please allow me to thank you again for the way in which our government cooperated with the Romanian Parliament, both during the preparations for the presidency, when we had very interesting debates that you supervised, and also during the actual presidency. We could rely on your support all the time, and we also had good guidance from the government so that we can approach the parliamentary dimension in a constructive manner. Now, dear colleagues, allow me to turn the floor to our Minister Delegate for European Affairs, Mr. George Ciamba. He is the minister in charge of managing the Romanian presidency to the EU Council. He will tell us how the presidency went from his point of view. And also, I would like to ask Mr. Ciamba to split his speaking time with the Secretary of State Mikula, who can tell us very useful things about how we approach the presidency, and then we'll turn the floor to our Finnish colleagues who will tell us how they prepare for such an event. So, Minister Ciamba, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prime Minister, Presidents, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am very glad to have been invited to your conference today. And I would like to congratulate the Romanian Parliament and especially the Commissions for European Affairs for their consistent involvement in the running of the presidency. Well, due to the events they organized under the parliamentary dimension, they have undoubtedly contributed to the success of this project. And I would like to thank the Prime Minister for the very good results we have obtained in all the files that were managed by the presidency. I would also like to thank the European Parliament, without which many of our results wouldn't have been possible. And also I would like to thank each Commission for European Affairs from the national parliament, who play such an important role in the legislative process, and without their contribution we couldn't have had the draft legislation on the table of the Council, the draft legislation that we managed to adopt during the Romanian presidency. Only a few days are left from our mandate, and in all the Council formations we have symbolically passed the relay to the incoming Finnish presidency. The next two councils will take place in Luxembourg tomorrow and the day after, and there are many events still taking place in Romania over these days. Our activity over the past few months was very intense, both on the legislative and non-legislative sides, and to our satisfaction we can say that we have fulfilled the objectives we had set for ourselves. We tried to work effectively without forgetting our main responsibility, the main task of the presidency, to act as an honest broker and to play a neutral role. We tried to play the authentic role of a rotating presidency. Our achievements are substantial, not only in terms of quantity, but also as far as quality is concerned. If we are to speak about the future of Europe, the way we can strengthen Romania's profile internationally, I think that our presidency played a very significant role in this respect. And let us not forget that presiding the Council formation was for Romania an opportunity to reassert its role as a full-fledged member of the European Union, and that has also helped us understand better the dynamic of the European process. Our first presidency was also full of challenges. Also, the EP elections took place, so we needed to ensure a transparent framework for the good development of the election process. We needed to provide a smooth transition to the next parliament, and also to manage the Brexit process, and also carefully deal with all the other files, for instance, the negotiations on the future MFF. These are horizontal files, and they represent an important workload on the European agenda. They also demanded our full commitment. We know that the European Union is going through an important process of transformation, also institutionally, because of the new European Parliament and the future Commission. So our presidency was both a challenge and an opportunity to contribute significantly in ensuring the democratic process in the European Union. We have encouraged specific actions in order to guarantee free and democratic elections throughout the European Union, and in order to prepare campaigns against disinformation. Therefore, in the Council, we tried to provide a coherent, a consistent action in order to preserve the democratic values of the European Union. We have adopted many amendments in order to improve the electoral legislation, in order to fight against the abusive use of personal data by certain organizations or governments or other actors in the electoral process. For instance, you remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal. So the results of that process were used by us in order to prevent such things from happening again. Free and democratic elections are very important for all member states. They we also needed to adopt non-legislative measures in order to fight against disinformation, to guarantee the protection of personal data. These are all the foundations of the future European dimension, and they will be the heritage of the Romanian presidency to the EU Council. We tried to provide coordinating action of the European states against disinformation, as I was saying, with a fast warning system. And we also tried to manage the Brexit files. We have ensured the adoption of the required legislative measures so that the EU and the remaining 27 member states are properly prepared for an event that we did not wish for, and we hope it won't happen. But we tried to do our best in order to be prepared, at least on the side of the European Union, if we have a situation without a deal. We went through a full reflection process on the strategy of the European Union and succeeded in adopting the new strategic agenda. Also, we have run the negotiations for the future MFF. For these reasons, we paid particular attention to this negotiation process. As I said, my council, the Council of General Affairs, debated publicly several times the future MFF. And we believe that due to everything we have succeeded to achieve, we have laid a good foundation for the future progress in this respect. We have managed to come to common understandings with the EP on 10 sectoral proposals for the MFF and also on several general approaches within the councils. They will be a good starting point for the incoming Finnish presidency. Then the general negotiation document involved the clarification of many options involved so that the future debates can be facilitated among the leaders. I also believe that I should briefly mention the substantial progress made by the Romanian presidency on other important files that will stay as priorities in the future and which are included on the recently adopted strategic agenda. For instance, on climate change, our presidency focused on a consistent and permanent dialogue in developing a common vision within the European Union for a long-term strategy and in order to ensure a sustainable transformation of our economy. I hope we have contributed in finding the proper conditions in order to ensure a balanced and fair transition for all citizens, taking into account the peculiarities and the specificities of each member state. This is very, very important for all of us, also because we have set an objective for ourselves, that is, for the European Union to play a leading role as a global actor in achieving the environmental targets. We also worked in the field of the energy union. We have adopted a directive in order to have a predictable framework in this respect that could bring added value in the perspective of the energy union. So we tried to develop a realistic transition to a low-carbon economy. We expect for the conclusions of the Council on the future of energy systems, which should be adopted in the following few days, to contribute in achieving these objectives. The Romanian presidency has taken measures in order to strengthen the single market, to make it fully operational, and we try to have an approach to guarantee its integrity and laying the stress among the four fundamental freedoms of persons, goods, capitals, and services. Also on the industrial policy, we tried to adopt an approach that is future-oriented, based on the citizens' needs and on the enterprises' needs, and also adjusted to the current context. And I mean, of course, the digital economy. We tried to have an ambitious approach to focus on the future, and we contributed significantly in the development of the single digital market. At the same time, in order to make most use of the benefits of artificial intelligence, we have launched a dialogue in this respect, and that's an incentive in order to increase productivity, competitiveness, innovation, and to improve significantly the business environment and also the everyday life of citizens, focusing on the competitiveness of the European companies, which is very important to all of us. Also, we have made progress in the social field. As you know, we have finalized the regulation on the European Labour Authority, and we also finalized the negotiations concerning the directive on the balance between private and working life, and we also tried to bring a contribution to improve the security at work of European citizens, and we also contributed substantially to securing the external borders of the European Union by adopting legislation that concerns the increase of the border and coastal guards to 10,000 officers in order for Frontex to achieve its objective of securing the external borders of the European Union. We have adopted also a sanctions framework for cyber attacks. It is for the very first time that we can apply direct sanctions against persons who perpetrate such acts. We have also made progress in the field of justice and internal affairs, giving a signal that our systems from now on will try to supplement each other, to work in a complementary way for the security of all, safety and security of all. That's an excellent example that illustrates the continuous cooperation among the member states for the internal security of the Union. The results obtained by our presidency in these fields and in others also concern closing many files that had been on the table of the Council for many, many years, and they are all high-impact files. For instance, enlargement, that was another important topic for us. We tried to work consistently, and we've done our utmost in order to support the efforts made by the candidate countries by inviting them, for instance, in many events organized by the presidency to promote regional cooperation. And we paid specific attention to all the young people in the region. For instance, we had a very important event for the youth from the Western Balkans, and that was a first step on which the future presidencies should build on, so that history never separates us again, and especially these countries which went through such difficult conflicts in our proximity. And of course, I mean the Western Balkans. Could you please try to wrap up, because I'm sure there will be many comments from the floor. The huge efforts made by the presidency focused on a consistent and united approach, and our results proved that Romania did act pragmatically and efficiently and knew how to focus its resources, and it acted with a lot of courage. We proved that Romania can bring an added value to the European project, and for us it was very important that we have obtained qualified majorities and together with the European Parliament, we managed to pass new legislation. I think that's our contribution to the European project. I will conclude now, thanking everyone who have helped us. Many of them are here in the room. Many were involved in this effort, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank each of you, all of you who have turned our presidency into a successful one. Thank you.
Mulțumesc foarte mult, George.
Thank you very much, George, for your presentation. I'm sure it could have been much longer, but I think you'll share. I'm sure you'll share your experience with everyone who wants to find out more about this presidency. So we have now 21 persons who want to take the floor. And we'll start with first colleague, Cristian Silviu Bușoi from the European Parliament. I would like to ask you to not to exceed 2.5 minutes because we have many requests for the floor. So please be reasonable so that everyone has the time to do it. Thank you very much for your understanding, and I appreciate the fact that you wanted to speak to us today.
Thank you so much. 2.5 minutes is more than we have in European Parliament, but because of this I will continue into Romanian if you allow me. Stimați colegi, iau cuvântul.
Dear colleagues, I now take the floor as a member of the European Parliament, but also as a Romanian citizen who is very glad to welcome the results obtained by the Romanian presidency to the EU Council. Just as the President of Romania declared last week at the European Council, our presidency was a successful one.
Romania started this presidency with a main goal that was making a contribution to a more coherent, cohesive and stronger European Union. And we believe that this main goal has been very vividly followed in this period. 90 legislative files have been concluded in the first 90 days, and cooperation with the European Parliament was a very good one. Of course, we've also had European elections during this period, but at least by the middle of April, when the European Parliament stopped its activity and started the electoral campaign, we've had a very intense period during which a lot of legislative files have been concluded. Maybe the most important file for all of us is the multi-annual financial framework. A very important thing here was that Romania was trying to give a chance to each and every member state to promote their priorities and to take part into the effort to define the priorities for the future. I will focus in the remaining time of my comment on 3 areas important for the European Parliament and which have seen progress during the Romanian presidency. As far as the internal market is concerned, Romania has had important contributions. Leaving aside the Council conclusions concerning the future of the European Union adopted in May, which require a quick assessment of all still existing barriers and of the need to strengthen the market. So beyond that, we've had a few directives that have been adopted during the presidency, such as the directive concerning digital content provision and digital services, the directive concerning the sales of goods, or the directive that updates the copyright legislation. In the field of industrial policy, again, a very important topic for the European Parliament, the 2030 vision, which has been adopted during the Romanian presidency, has also represented an important step. And finally, the cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Here, we provided a framework that for the first time imposes penalties for those who commit crimes, cybernetic crimes, cybercrimes, and also, as far as the future of the artificial intelligence is concerned, we've had a very successful dialogue on this topic. And last but not least, Romania supported all the digital initiatives. So I think these are all important contributions, and we were able to show that these priorities are important not just for Romania, but for all Europe. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Once again, please excuse me for cutting you off, but really I'm just trying to make sure that there is enough time for everyone to take the floor. That is why I do this, and I do apologize for that. Mr. Dragan Sormas from Serbia.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, first, I want to thank Romania for its consistent support to Serbia during its EU integration. However, my next words will be addressed to the Brussels administration. I do not understand why the countries of the Western Balkans slow down on their way to membership. North Macedonia and Albania have not received the candidacy, and Serbia is slowly opening chapters. At the moment, Serbia is ready to open 5 chapters and will be open maximum 2. I understand that chapters are not closed if the necessary standards are not reached in some area, but I do not understand the opening, because only when the chapter opens starts with faster reforms, and the reforms are measurable by the US side on that way. The negotiations of the normalization of relations between Belgrade and Pristina under the guidance of the EU have been completely interrupted. Everything signed in the Brussels agreement, Serbia has failed, Pristina nothing. The Association of Serb municipalities has not been formed, and the situation is even worse by the introduction of 100% taxes on goods from Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. The recent meeting in Berlin has not yielded any result, and announced in Paris with President Merkel and Prime Minister Merkel and President Macron has been postponed because Pristina refuses to abolish the tax regardless of what the whole world requires of them. We hope that you, as parliamentarians, will find a way to solve this problem. Otherwise, the region will become increasingly unstable. Thank you.
Mulțumesc foarte mult.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Mr. Lech Kolakowski, Poland.
Koleżanki, koledzy.
Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, we would like to congratulate the Romanian presidency on its successes. It's a difficult period of time, I admit. Romania has been an excellent negotiator and has achieved much progress in different areas. We regret, however, the changes within the so-called mobility package. In spite of removing old barriers, new barriers are created. The Mobility Package 1 consists of 3 legislative acts that propose a complex revision to the principles in which international road transportation functions in the European Union. The European Commission, when presenting their proposals in 2017, made a declaration that the package is going to be a cornerstone for further strengthening of the single market and ensuring better working conditions. Unfortunately, the results of the recent work show that instead of efforts towards strengthening our internal market and making or improving the efficiency of the road transportation in the EU, we are moving in the opposite direction. We are maintaining, actually creating new administrative barriers on this market. Let me remind you that the European road transportation plays a very important role in the economy of the European Union. Cargo transportation, about 3 people are employed here, and about 600,000 operators are active on this market. Its functioning and competitiveness have a key role for the generation of the EU GDP and creating new jobs. This sector deserves just and solid legal frameworks for the European Union that should further stimulate its development and a good functioning single market, ensuring at the same time realistic, enforceable principles. In this context, I appeal to everyone that during our further work on the Mobility Package 1, we should be determined to approve sustainable and prepared solutions, such solutions that on the one hand will improve the working conditions for the drivers, but on the other hand should create added value for the European road transportation. Mr. Chairman, I would like to stress here that the Romanian presidency has been an excellent negotiator in the gas directive. Also, the Western Balkans negotiations have been very successful. There has been much success also for the stability in the neighborhood policy. Thank you very much.
Și eu vă mulțumesc foarte mult.
Thank you very much for your kind words, sir. At the same time, I appreciate the fact that the efforts that our presidency has made in the negotiations has not been overlooked. Now I will give the floor to Mrs. Eleni Stavru from Cyprus.
Dear colleagues, well, undoubtedly, this is a very complex time and age. We have the migration crisis, the security crisis that Europe is confronted with. They put at risk the future of the Union itself. The leaders of the European Union are called to deal with a major challenge, defend in all available ways the principles and values on the basis of which the EU was founded, while at the same time ensuring a democratic and safe Europe for its citizens. The Schengen area is one of the major achievements of European integration. A condition, however, is to remain in order to keep borders open, we need to strengthen our external borders and ensure their effective protection. The agreement reached during the Romanian presidency on the new rules that will apply for the further strengthening of the European Border Guard and Coast Guard, this is yet another important step towards a more effective control of the Union's external borders. Cyprus is a Mediterranean country, and as mentioned at the recent Med7 summit, we experience on a daily basis the impact of the migration flows, so we expect a lot from this agreement. We want to welcome the approval of rules for defining a framework for interoperability between the various information systems in the EU in the area of justice and home affairs. This will contribute towards preventing and combating illegal migration. Cyprus is a warm supporter, and we fully support and participate in all initiatives towards strengthening defense and security cooperation among member states, because PESCO is an important step towards a military independence of Europe, and we hope that we will once get a true European defense policy that will safeguard Europe's borders and safeguard the interests of European citizens. Cyprus is the only country that has part of its territory occupied by Turkey. We'll certainly look forward to PESCO that will strengthen our position. Thank you very much.
Și eu vă mulțumesc foarte mult.
Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to Mr. Richard Horsek from Hungary.
Mr. Chairman, let me start by thanking the Romanian presidency for its hard work. Everybody knows that Europe stands in front of an institutional renewal. Regarding the leaders concerned, I clearly wish to save us from the automatic application of the Spitzenkandidaten system, since it is the privilege of the European Council to nominate the Commission presidents. In addition, I find it more important than ever that geographical balance should be duly respected in this nomination process. In my committee, Mr. Chairman, in Budapest, we monitor the main issues like the MFF, Brexit, or the migration crisis closely, but I see, not for the same reasons, but no hope for swift agreements. Hungary cannot accept the drastic reduction of budget expenditures of traditional policies and considers that cohesion and the security of people require additional funding. Regarding Brexit, Mr. Chairman, I call for an orderly withdrawal, which is our common interest and, in my assessment, to the only viable way of separation. In the field of migration, Mr. Chairman, the Hungarian position is unchanged. The full and the effective protection of European Union external borders is our main priority. Therefore, We also supported the amendments on the Frontex regulation. Last but not least, Mr. Chairman, let me speak about enlargement. Let me use the term our enlargement, since Montenegro and Serbia are on the way to be ready for the European Union membership. Not later, but sooner, we used to say. Finally, Mr. Chairman, the accession negotiation with North Macedonia and Albania should have already been started. Europe needs Western Balkan, as Western Balkan countries need Europe. It is not just our historical obligation, but our common geographical and economic interest. Thank you very much for your attention.
Mulțumesc foarte mult pentru maniera sintetică.
Thank you very much for the brief but very comprehensive exposition of your positions on the main issues on the European agenda. And now I will give the floor to Mrs. Regina Bastos from Portugal, please.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you, President. President, colleagues, I'd like to start by congratulating and thanking the Romanian presidency and the Romanian Parliament for their work over the last 6 months. A lot has happened over the last 6 months. Brexit, the European Parliament elections last month. And I think it's also worth flagging that the presidency has managed very ambitious dossiers, and you have pursued your objective very courageously. Cohesion is one of your main aims, and it's essential to us in Portugal, and defending this value is crucial if we are going to achieve a united Europe based on solidarity and focused on the well-being of our citizens. We adopted the convergence agenda, and we need to continue working on that to iron out development differences and to address the challenges of the digital age and the challenges of the market. Migration is very important as well. We need to approach the question of migration together, and the fight against terrorism is another front that we have to work on in order to ensure that we have a more secure Europe, a Europe that has to be courageous in tackling racism, xenophobia and populism. The challenge of climate change is something that's been taken up by the younger generation, and that must remain one of our main objectives. And then there's the question of the completion of economic and monetary union, and we need to pursue our work on the next MFF. All those issues need to remain priorities. If we don't achieve those objectives, we're going to undermine the trust of our citizens. Thank you.
Și eu vă mulțumesc foarte, foarte mult.
Thank you very, very much for confirming the fact that Romania's priorities coincide with the concerns and of interest of many other member states. And now I will give the floor to our distinguished colleagues, the Honourable Günther Kriegbaum from Germany.
Nein, jetzt. Sehr geehrter Herr Vorsitzender.
Thank you, President, and thank you very much for all your efforts in the last 6 months. I know days only have 24 hours. You've really put in the hours. It's marvelous to come to an inter-parliamentary conference. We've got not only to tackle the issues, but we've got to look at new personalities in offices post-European elections. Now, you know, 5 years ago we had this Spitzenkandidaten system. The idea was that political families would have champions. We felt that this Europe of ours needs faces. 5 years ago, it was a different situation. Jean-Claude Juncker got the most votes, and for Martin Schulz, He congratulated Jean-Claude Juncker. He said he'd support Jean-Claude Juncker and he'd support the Spitzenkandidaten system. Mr. Schulz was very broad-minded. Now the situation's different. Now we're seeing a different kind of power struggle, and Parliament may be losing the power play with the European or against the European Council. I mean, things became more democratic in a way because there were faces, but now we're arm wrestling with the European Council, and we are cocking a snook at our voters. We won't in 5 years be able to have a Spitzenkandidaten system where we show individuals as our candidates. The system's broken or will be broken. So please, please, everybody, lobby your colleagues in your governments, lobby your colleagues in the European Parliament. We as parliamentarians shouldn't lose the opportunity to keep our hand on the tiller. We've pushed for parliamentarism in the European process. The European Parliament is running the risk of losing our credibility, and then there's the risk that people no longer believe in us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Günther, for your approach and for your point of view. I think it's very interesting and very provocative for us, it's very challenging, that is, as parliamentarians. I also would like to thank you for your constant advice, and I have to admit that we have carefully listened to you ever since January, ever since we have been planning this Cosac session, and I'm very grateful to you for that. I will now give the floor to Mr. Vitalino Canas from Portugal.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by congratulating the Romanian presidency on its success. I'd like to focus on 2 points. They're not specific to the Romanian presidency, but they're very topical at European Union level, and they will have a major impact in the future. First of all, the agreement in the Eurogroup on creating a European budgetary capacity or instruments for the euro. This hasn't been mentioned thus far. Some people say that these matters are only of concern to certain member states, that some member states are more interested than others in this budgetary capacity. Well, I don't agree, because the existence of such a tool, such an instrument, which will allow us to offset imbalances and external shocks, is important for all member states, not just those who are members of the Eurogroup. And it's important for the world as a whole. The euro needs mechanisms to ensure its stability and to strengthen it. So I would like to lay down a marker there. I would like us to continue to work on this instrument. An agreement was reached, but there are still some matters which haven't been addressed fully. For example, on the actual functions of this tool and also the financial backing for it. And then the second point is something that was referred to by our German colleague, European governance. This is something that's being discussed at the moment. I agree with the importance of the Spitzenkandidaten system, but they were agreed on in a certain context, and maybe such a system isn't appropriate in the present circumstances. We need to avoid a splitting in the Council and the Parliament. We need to strike a balance. The European Parliament and the Council aren't made up of just two major groups. There are other groups that have become more important, and there are other balances as well, geographical balance between the different political groups, and the ability to take forward an agenda that strengthens the European Union.
Mulțumesc foarte mult.
Thank you very much, Vitalino. I have to say that I envy your extraordinary stamina and energy. We meet quite often, and I know that you have been the chair of an important meetings that happen in this building, that is the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. Now I'll give the floor to Mr. Cristian Vigenin from Bulgaria. Mr. Vigenin has long been concerned with European issues, and he has been an inspiration for me when I thought of how to organize this meeting. Cristian, you have the floor.
I would like to congratulate Romania for the success of its first presidency of the Council, and I would like to especially highlight the dynamic parliamentary dimension, and I thank our hosts for all efforts they have done. I reiterate that Bulgaria supports the priorities of the Romanian presidency. We commend the motto of the presidency on cohesion as a common European value, and especially the focus on convergence, both on its internal dimension as economic and social convergence, and on its external political dimension with a view of keeping the security and the unity of the European Union. The period of the Romanian presidency was full of significant events for the future development of the EU, the most significant being the election of the European Parliament and the Sibiu summit, which marked the beginning of the new institutional cycle of the Union. During the Romanian presidency, there was a good progress on various policies of the EU, and I would like to highlight some areas of ongoing political activity. The enlargement policy has always been a priority for Bulgaria. We should not forget that Europe outside our Union is still not united. For this reason, we should further develop the relations with our neighboring regions. In this respect, we appreciate the sustained efforts from the Bulgarian presidency and the commitment by the Romanian presidency to keep the focus on enhancing the European perspective for the Western Balkans. We underline the importance of good neighbourly relations and regional cooperation, which also fall within the framework of established conditionalities and should be subject to evaluation throughout the entire accession process. During the Romanian presidency, a further step was made on strengthening the EU commitment to the Black Sea region, the launch of a strategic research and innovation agenda for the Black Sea. It aims to advance a shared vision for productive, healthy, resilient and sustainable Black Sea by 2030. We fully support this initiative. In the field of social policy, our biggest aim is building a fairer and socially just European Union. Here I would like to commend the efforts of the Romanian presidency for its achievements. For example, the Work-Life Balance Directive will encourage women's participation in the labour market and thus promoting further gender equality. During the Romanian presidency, great progress has been made on establishing the European Labour Authority. Besides the adoption of the required legislation, the seat of the authority has also been determined. I hope that the next Finnish presidency will further build on these achievements. Thank you.
Mulțumesc foarte mult, Cristian.
Thank you very much, Cristian. I invite Mrs. Rubina Berardo to take the floor.
Thank you, President. I would like to greet all my colleagues here. I'd like to congratulate the European Council presidency of Romania. Now we're looking back. Of course, we've got to concentrate on the cohesion policy as being a linchpin. It's part of the diversity of the Union as well, and one of the strengths of our project. Of course, the Union is vast and broad. There are a lot of challenges. There are so many types of regional diversity, and it makes work difficult in the institutions. Things are different in the center from the periphery. We made a proposal for amendment to our recommendations here. We would like this strategy which is supported by the Commission concerning 349, i.e. the peripheral regions, the outermost regions will be strengthened, as will their socio-economic development in the context of their distance from the center of the Union. I'm thinking of adverse climatic conditions in regions belonging to France, Spain, and Portugal. We've got to use smart technologies to get over barriers and integrate the outermost regions in the Union, because distance is a problem when the context of geostrategy, plus involvement in the single market. The Union must guarantee strong presence in the outermost regions. This will be important in the MFF negotiations, plus the new institutional cycle negotiations. Let's not have a centrifugal Europe. Let's really help the outermost regions be integrated, because they have huge innovative potential.
Thank you very much. From Albania, I give the floor to Mrs. Rudina Hadjari.
Thank you very much. I'd like to also congratulate Romania for a successful mandate of the presidency. Also, would like to thank Romania for supporting and being a great partner to Albania and the Western Balkan region in their EU enlargement, EU accession talks agenda. Albania has been a candidate country since 2014 and has been waiting in the doorsteps of the EU for about 6 years now. And after 2 positive recommendations from the EU Commission, we still had a deadlock when it comes to opening our accession talks. Albania has shown a strong determination to advance on the EU path and has achieved great results, and these results are irreversible. Justice reform has been a crucial step for the country into fortifying our institutions and combating corruption. A lot remains to be done as we build our institutions, but we believe that our partnership with the EU countries and opening the accession talks will fortify and deepen our democratic reforms. We believe that EU accession talks is not automatic enlargement. So we call on our Dutch colleagues and French colleagues that seem very far from certain into accepting Albania to open accession talks to support us and not let migration and other issues to create new hurdles for the Western Balkan countries. We must never forget the Thessaloniki promise. We are here because we believe that what unites us is bigger than what divides us. So we hope that in October, the European Union will deliver accession talks for Albania and North Macedonia. Thank you very much.
Mulțumesc frumos.
Thank you very much. I apologize. I skipped over a speaker, Mr. Aron Farrugia from Malta. I apologize, dear colleague, and please have the floor.
Chair, I would like to share my thoughts in my own language, Maltese.
I would like to start by thanking the Romanian presidency for its successes throughout these last 6 months. You were able to close many legislative files, and there were conclusions also within the ministerial councils, as well as provisional agreement on quite a number of subjects. Minister Chamba already delved in detail on these topics, but I would like to mention a few of them because they are important to us as Europeans. We're talking about energy union, capital markets union, enlargement, cybersecurity, digital single market, as well as the consumers package, amongst many other files. And you had a very short time to work. We know there were the elections, and therefore this window of opportunity for decisions was very short. We must also consider the trialogues. Obviously, you also led this presidency in turbulent times. We know that the Brexit negotiations were underway, as was expected. There were many other issues, tripartite ones and governmental ones, which also questioned the very European project. There were the European elections with quite a lot of expectations. But personally, I think that you managed to really attract my admiration, as you gave a very big imprint to the cohesion policy. You put the cohesion policy at the forefront of your agenda. And this means very much to us, because the cohesion policy is the principal economic and financial instrument for us as Europeans. And here I am a bit disappointed, because I know you tried very much to work in this sector, but you did not have the cooperation that one would have expected. And I think that from discussions about horse trading and who is going to lead the European Council, the European Commission and the European Parliament, I believe that the man in the street in our villages and towns are more interested in, as much as possible, going to the MFF negotiations to be able to spend the European funds in time. Disappointed as well with regards to the lack of the agreement on the budget for the Eurozone and with regards to zero carbon until 2050. And of course, this is a disappointment which I wish to share with you. There was also a very important political imprint with regards to Sibiu, and there as well we had the race to the strategic agenda, which is being discussed on the level of the European Council. I thank you very much.
Și eu vă mulțumesc. Și din
Thank you very much as well. From Montenegro now, Mr. Slaven Radenovic, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, on the last Cosac chairpersons meeting, Montenegro warmly welcomed the priorities of the Romanian presidency and focus on the EU of convergence, safety and common values. Today, we reiterate the support, believing that the Union should use all opportunities to strengthen its internal stability, cooperation and unity, and ultimately its position as an important global actor. It is crucial for the whole Europe to have a strong EU that lives in the democratic values, is based upon, and that uses its strength and stability to influence the stability in its neighborhood. For Montenegro and all Western Balkan countries, besides from having stable and economically and politically strong EU, it is of crucial importance that the interest for the ultimate democratization of the region is constantly present and clearly shown. Keeping enlargement policy on the agenda implies the fostering of fundamental reforms in the region, which is a constant reminder of one of the greatest benefits of EU accession process. EU's interest for the Western Balkans region can significantly influence the speed of the reforms and further progress towards democratic transformation of the countries. When I say interest, I'm not talking about giving us fake promises and hopes. I'm talking about concrete support and assistance in the implementation of all crucial requirements and reforms. Our countries are not old, strong democracies, as you know, but rather fragile ones, with strong ruling parties that have all mechanisms of power in their hands. This is why we need an active influence of the EU to help us make the final and decisive steps towards an environment in which our citizens will really feel and believe in all the values of democracy: rule of law, freedom, respect of fundamental rights and economic growth. I'm confident that in this way, the criticism from the European Commission reports would be adequately addressed and that the future reports would be much brighter for all candidates and potential candidate countries. Thank you.
Mulțumesc foarte mult.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Mrs. Blerta Deliu Codra.
Thank you, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, initially, let me express my pleasure to addressing this plenary meeting of Cosac in Bucharest as chairperson of the Committee on European Integration of the Assembly of Kosovo. Also, let me express our commitment to advance the European integration process, the dynamics of which we hope shall be accelerated. For Kosovo, the European integration process is not an alternative, but it is the path we have chosen, and we must carry out our task in order to mark progress. The entry into force of the Stabilization and Association Agreement that made Kosovo for the first time to enter into contractual relation with the European Union should also serve as an incentive to successfully implement the same in order to continue our journey toward the European Union. In addition to the Stabilization and Association Agreement, let me also mention the entry into force of the Framework Agreement for access to EU programs, which also opens the door of further cooperation and reconfirms the European Union as the largest development partner for Kosovo. However, there are many challenges ahead of us. Among them, I would first mention the fact that citizens of Kosovo do not enjoy the right to free movement in European Union countries, thus being as isolated citizens of this part of Europe. From the European Commission, each condition from the roadmap was evaluated from 95, as we had, much more than any states that has liberalized. One for one we have accomplished it, but we still do not have the Council decision for visa liberalization for citizens of Kosovo. In this crucial process for Kosovo, the Stabilization Association Agreement implementation is our most important priority. Stabilization and Association Agreement implementation now is regarding the approximation of legislation with EU standards and full implementation of the legislation in practice. This will require political will, bureaucratic capacity, and sustainable funding. In order to prioritize reform ahead of us, the institution of Kosovo and the European Union has launched the European Reform Agenda. We consider European value as ours, and our journey is not completed without joining the European family. And the last thing, European Union is an ideal of peace and stability for us, a dream that has inspired us in our beginnings and around which we want to build our future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And now from the European Parliament, Ms. Maria João Rodrigues.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I think it's very important that we use this opportunity of the Cosac conferences to discuss among us. And we just came from a very important moment, which was the European elections. And the elections providing a very clear message on many more citizens really waiting for the European Union to act and to cope with the challenges ahead. And yes, there is now the opportunity to deepen European democracy. Our German colleague has raised a very important point, which is how should we choose the chair of the European Commission? And indeed, this choice should reflect the outcome of the European elections, but I would argue that the way to reflect should also take into account the majority we can build inside the European Parliament and inside the European Council. And this is exactly what is happening now, is that we are exploring what kind of majority we can build. And from my viewpoint, again, the European elections has provided a very clear message. We need a majority to ensure that we have the European Union providing a real opportunity to all member states and to all citizens. This means that we should implement the European social pillar in all member states, raising social standards. This means that we should count on a community budget, giving the possibility for all member states to invest in the future, to address climate change, to drive the digital revolution. This also means to complete the economic and monetary union with a real budget. And all these will be the hands of this majority. So my appeal is that all the parliamentarians, they pay attention for next week's negotiation, because what is at stake is to prepare a new majority for European Union all our citizens deserve.
Mulțumesc foarte mult.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Mrs. Sabine Thier.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The Romanian presidency has accompanied our negotiations on the next MFF, which has allowed us to make progress on a number of chapters, but we have a very ambitious strategic program: innovation, defense, security, climate change. And we should not forget traditional policies, the common agricultural policy, for example, and cohesion, because for many member states, those are still extremely important. But Brexit is also an opportunity to rethink the way we use our budgetary funds and to simplify and make them easier to understand. And I think we need to encourage, above all, a new way of thinking, moving beyond unanimity for decision-taking in Council. That's a sine qua non condition, I think, if we want to move forward. And we, as representatives of national parliaments, also need to make sure that we do our part, and our capacity to act rests on whether we're going to have enough money to do so. So we need to play our part there. Now, a number of colleagues are quite afraid of the idea of giving the EU more money, and I think they need to think carefully about this. We need to make sure that there's more money available and that existing funds are also used more efficiently.
Thank you very much for your comment, Sabine, for your intervention. From Ireland, Mr. Terry Layden, you have the floor.
Mr. President, on behalf of the Irish delegation, I wish to express to you my sincere thanks for your hospitality which you've extended to us here, this beautiful city of Bucharest and Romania, and this beautiful weather you're giving us as well. Well done for your work, for your contribution, for your presentation, and for your commitment to the European Union. It's a great success for a country that's so recently members of the European Union that you've achieved the presidency and are using it so well. I'd like to say that your ambassador in Ireland have briefed us very much on your plans last January, and indeed we are very impressed by her presentation, and Romania is very well represented in Ireland by your ambassador. Thank her for her work. Just in relation to the developments and expansion of the European Union, I think it's very important that, irrespective of Brexit, that the European Union must continue to expand and develop and embrace the other applicant countries. I was co-rapporteur for the Council of Europe in relation to Montenegro. On February 27, 2014, I was appointed a co-rapporteur. On 27 January 2015, I presented a report on the honouring of obligations and commitments by Montenegro to the Council of Europe, which was unanimously accepted. I visited Montenegro at least 3 times, very impressed by their presentation, very impressed by their work, and very impressed by their eagerness to join the European Union. And they are seen as a stabilising force within the Balkans. And I must say I am anxious that they will join. Indeed, the Irish government are very supportive of the extension and the development of the European Union and for the expansion of the European Union to embrace the Balkans and country applicants at the moment. The date set is 2025. In the meantime, I know that Montenegro has access to the European Union, free movement throughout the Union, and I must say, as someone that spent time there, I just wish them every success, and I look forward to meeting the delegation here in this assembly here in Bucharest, and also wish the other applicant countries every success. And again, I reiterate that Ireland is very much supportive of the expansion of the European Union, which is a stabilisation force which has brought prosperity to Europe, and I must say it's most regrettable the United Kingdom are considering leaving such a fine family. We'll miss them, but we have to get on without them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very interesting approach. Thank you for expressing your appreciation for the efforts Romania have done so far in order to ensure a good conduct of the presidency. And now let me invite and give the floor to Ms. Imam Hussein Filiz from Turkey. Thank you. I'm terribly sorry. Mr. Imam Hussein Filiz, yes.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say first, Romania is our valuable neighbor, ally, and strategic partner. We are committed to further strengthening our partnership that rests on the two pillars of security and economic cooperation. In view of the contemporary challenges that the European Union is faced with, keeping the European integration process of the region alive is the main priority of the future prospects. We are glad that the Romanian presidency evaluated the enlargement perspective as an element to enhance domestic and international security as well. Turkey welcomes the prioritization of the issue of migration by the Romanian presidency. We were pleased to witness Romania's well-intended efforts to strengthen the cooperation between the EU member states, the transit countries, and the source countries, as well as endeavors to set and influence sustainable EU policy on migration. As a front country who undertakes a remarkable and serious level of responsibility and thus alleviates the EU's burden, we would like to take this opportunity to reiterate our sincere wish that these efforts are maintained by the upcoming term presidencies and conclude with a comprehensive and viable settlement for all of us. Turkey is a guarantor country to protect the rights and security of Turkish Cypriots. A settlement in Cyprus issue will definitely contribute to the security and prosperity of the entire Eastern Mediterranean region. However, transposing bilateral problems into the EU area is not helping anyone. It is just making the issue more complicated and harder to solve. Thank you very much for your attention.
Mulțumesc foarte mult și
Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Since we still have 6 speakers on our list, I would kindly ask them, and I apologize for not telling you this from the very beginning, because we didn't take into account the fact that there were other people who wanted to take the floor, and I accepted because I wanted everybody to be able to speak. But my desire would be for the last 6 speakers to speak for a little less time, because I would like to give the opportunity to the Secretary of State, Mr. Victor Nicola, to address us. And hopefully, I think you will agree that we will run over the first session, we'll exceed the time allotted, because we are trying to have a very comprehensive debate, and I would like to be able to conclude that debate without preventing anyone from addressing the floor. I do hope you all agree to that. Now I give the floor to Mrs. Anne Mulder from the Netherlands.
Thank you, Chairman. A number of speakers have talked about the enlargement of the European Union with new countries, and I think that we should have an open discussion about that. And maybe it's a good thing to say, when we talk about enlargement in the European Parliament, in the Dutch Parliament rather, some people say that in the past we didn't go quickly enough with enlargement, but I do have to say something about Romania, unfortunately. In 2007, Romania became a member of the European Union, and it wasn't quite ready, really, for accession, but we decided to have the coordination and verification mechanism to help Romania with its legal reform, fighting corruption, and fighting organized crime. That was meant to be a temporary measure, and 10 years after Romania acceded to the EU, they're still part of that process, surprisingly. And is it helping? Well, in the Netherlands, we don't think so. We've thought Romania acceded too quickly, and so perhaps Prime Minister Tansila could tell us when Romania will meet the recommendations for this mechanism. That'll be good for Romania, good for the European Union, and good for the other countries that would like to accede to the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. We will pay it due attention. And I will give the floor to Mr. Gerard Crowell from Ireland.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much and congratulations on your excellent chairing of this meeting. Mr. Chairman, Europe is at war. We're at war all day, every day. And the new place for war is in cyberspace. It's the new battleground. We must have a whole EU approach to the cybersecurity and military or defence technology, if you want. The key areas of concern for Ireland and for me is the protection of our intellectual property rights, our banking and financial systems, and our manufacturing systems. In this war, we'll always be a step behind. And with the current situation in the European Union, we will be many steps behind because we do not have an intelligence collection capability independent within Europe. We depend on third-party information, and sadly, it has to be said, countries maintain their intelligence gathering and are quite jealously guarding what they know. And until such a time as Europe shares intelligence through a central agency, we will continue to face the problems. The problems associated with cybersecurity, the problems associated with migration and soft terrorism, the failure to provide information across the entire Union exacerbates this problem and allows those who wish to exploit it to move freely across the European Union. I could speak about the B word, but I'll leave that for the next session. One final point I'd like to make, and that is there's been some talk here about the expansion of the European Union into the Western Balkans. And while I support this, from an economist's point of view, there is a diminishing marginal return that we need to be aware of with respect to expansion. But more importantly, the words that have been used today are peace, stability, and my colleague from Turkey referred to bilateral problems. If there are bilateral problems, they must be resolved before we can expand into that part of the world. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your kind words. In turn, I am inspired by your activities, especially in terms of migration. I have always followed your activity and always had something to learn. I give the floor now to Mr. Bernard Durkan.
First of all, I would like to congratulate again the Romanian presidency for the manner in which they handled their presidency, the professionalism and the degree to which they engage with each member state, sometimes in difficult circumstances. There were many challenges, but you handled them well, and you showed that you were capable of introducing a professionalism that is necessary within the European Union. Then there will always be challenges. If it's not one issue, it's another. And I think each of us Europeans, regardless of where we come from, we have a role to play, we have a positive role to play, we have a meaningful role to play. And if we play that well, Europe will prevail. If we miss out, if we go in different directions, if we seek to break up the European Union, we are on a path that's not to glory, unfortunately, and a huge price will be paid for all Europeans. And that's not an oblique reference even to our colleagues from the UK who propose to leave the Union. Anything that changes the structure of the European Union and divides it is not helpful either to the Union, to Europe itself, or to the countries involved. And in fact has a global dimension as well. So I would hope that in the challenges that lie ahead, that it will be possible to come to an agreement as the UK leaves the Union and that we don't have a destructive exit. I think what's also important to remember the other challenges along the way. We have such challenges as digitalisation, which are challenges, cybercrime, the need to protect our children and the ever-increasing threats to our children and our families through cybercrime. I think that we also have the challenge of climate change, and each and every country, including Ireland, has a meaningful role to play, which we will play in that and achieve the desired results. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I now give the floor to Lord Robin Teverson from the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and can I thank the Romanian presidency for helping the UK to remain within the European Union for at least till the autumn and hopefully for longer. Rumours of our departure are sometimes exaggerated, but I want to talk about a major failure, and not a failure of the presidency, but a failure of the European Council last week. The European Union has played a major role in leadership on climate change globally, and we were promoting as a group of member states very strongly the Paris Agreement, where we have an obligation to keep to 2 degrees, hopefully 1.5 degrees of increase in temperature only by 2050. Yet last week the European Council failed to come to an agreement of a carbon-neutral European Union by 2050. That means that at the United Nations conference in September in New York, we will not be able to proudly go as a European Union, as we normally do, to that assembly, leading the world and saying that we have committed to what is necessary to meet those targets. I think that is of great regret, and I hope it is something that can be put right and something that the United Kingdom can remain a part of and a leader to in that area. Thank you, President.
Mulțumesc foarte mult, Lord.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Mr. Alessandro Gigliovinia from Italy.
Thank you, President. Many compliments for your 6 months holding the presidency. Your ambassador in Rome has been working closely together with us. We have come to know your country better, and we welcome your move towards our European community of values. Our country in Italy would like to get over the technocratic European dimension. It's important for us to work together in reinforcing external borders. You in Central and Eastern Europe have large or long land borders which need to be patrolled in order to contemplate and deal with problems in trafficking human beings. There's a mafia at work in trafficking human beings. We've got to do this in the context of a global fight against terrorism.
Thank you very much, and let me appreciate the efforts made by our colleagues who were very concise, because this helps us to observe the agenda. And I appreciate the sacrifices that you made, because I am sure that you had many other interesting things to say. Now, last but not least, before giving the floor to Mr. Nicula, I will like to give the floor to Mr. Jumi Ovasca from the incoming presidency. You have the floor.
Chairman, arvoisa puheenjohtaja, hyvät ystävät.
Mr. President, dear friends, on behalf of the Finnish delegation, I would like to thank the Romanian presidency for the good work they have accomplished during their presidency. It has been a great joy listening to all the thanks that you have received. However, this makes me stress about the Finnish presidency and all the issues we have to deal with. Cohesion policy, MFF, security, climate issues, and enlargement are only a few of the issues that we will work with during our presidency. At the same time, immigration, Brexit, and external relations also need some effort. However, we are looking forward to our presidency. There's no need to remind that the European Union can find solutions to the problems we're facing and and these solutions can only be found if we stick to our common values. I would like to thank you and warmly wish you welcome to Finland.
Thank you very much. As we counted on the support of the former presidency, which I'd like to thank, I would like to invite you to count on our support because we are open to it. And now, at the end, I would like to give the floor to the Secretary of State, Victor Nicula, for the final remarks. And immediately after he finishes the speech, and immediately after, I will declare the first session closed to meet at the back of the room for a family photo. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your understanding because we exceeded by a few minutes the time allotted. Minister, you have the floor. Presidents, distinguished parliamentarians, first of all, I would like to thank you for the fact that you allowed me to be here today. And I wanted to finish with a conclusion and two thanks. The conclusion that I reached by listening to all of you during this morning's debate is that the priorities set by the Romanian presidency in these first 6 months of the year coincides with the agenda of the national parliaments. And this, I think, was one of the explanations of the success that we had in concluding several legislative files and advancing several non-legislative files. To a large extent, the support that we received from all of you in your respective parliaments in the dialogue with your respective governments helped us to get the support of the member states in the Council. And at the same time, the support from the European political families also helped us to conclude successfully trialogues with the European Parliament. So I would like to thank you all for your work during these past 6 months and wish you every success in promoting the European project in your own respective parliaments. The second message is thanks to the Parliament of Romania. The Prime Minister and Minister Ciamba already gave their thanks to the Romanian Parliament for the support shown, but I thought it would be useful for you if I talk about the reasons why we thank the Romanian Parliament for its support. First of all, because during the preparation stage, they closely followed the progress that we made in planning and preparing for our mandate. And whenever necessary, through the specialty committees in the Romanian Parliament, we got some sort of parental guidance which helped us to be able to implement the priorities that we set for ourselves. At the same time, the Parliament made a particular effort to adjust its activity and in reducing the areas they use for the current activities of the Parliament so that we would be able to use this building as the main conference center for the events that were organized by the Romanian presidency. The Prime Minister said that we organized so far over 1,700 events. Out of these, 300 took place in Romania. And out of the 300 taking place in Romania, 128 took place in this very building. So the Parliament of Romania, the Senate and the Chamber of Deputies actually set their meetings at impossible hours so that they would allow us to be good hosts and use this conference center from the Parliament building. So this is why I would like to thank you for what you do for the European project in your own respective parliaments. And I would like to thank the Romanian Parliament for translating into practice the motto of cohesion. We worked as a team, and I would like to thank the permanent offices of both chambers and the committees for foreign relations from both chambers. And A particular thanks goes to the Secretariat General of the two chambers for their work for this common effort. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you as well, Mr. State Secretary, and I now declare this first session closed. I invite you back to the back of the room for the family photo, and after refreshments, we'll come back for the second session that would be led by my colleague, Senator Gabriela Crețu. Thank you once again for your understanding.